Good afternoon to all, and welcome to the IPGA Knowledge Series webinar. Today, we have joined hands with the India and Myanmar Chamber of Commerce to host this webinar to take a close look at the Tur, Urad, and Moong scenario both in Myanmar as well as in India, and have an amazing panel waiting to speak to all of you. It is our honor and privilege to welcome Ms. Nidhi Khare, Additional Secretary, Department of Consumer Affairs, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, Government of India, who has graciously agreed to step in place of Secretary Ma'am Ms. Lianardan, who was called away for an urgent meeting. Also an honor and privilege to welcome His Excellency Shri Saurabh Kumar, Ambassador of India to Myanmar, Mr. Jitu Beda, Chairman IPGA, Mr. Sunil Seth, President, India Myanmar Chamber of Commerce, and our panelists, Mr. Puneet Bachawat, Mr. Vatsal Lilani, Mr. Deshratna, who has graciously accepted to step in place of Mr. Nuria, who's unwell, and Mr. Breed Krishnamurthy. Without taking too much time, I'm now going to invite Chairman IPGA, Mr. Please address the audience. Mr. Beda, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jitu Beda, Chairman of India Pulses and Grains Association. It is my honor and pleasure to extend a warm welcome to Madam Nidhi Khare, Additional Secretary, Department of Consumer Affairs, Government of India. I really appreciate Madam for accepting our invitation at the last moment, as Madam Nidhi Khare, Secretary, Department of Consumer Affairs, is unable to participate in the webinar due to some urgent work. I also thank Shri Saurabh Kumar, Honorable Ambassador of India to Myanmar, esteemed speakers, and all the participants of today's webinar. We thank you for accepting our invitation to share your thoughts in today's webinar and appreciate your support and cooperation. I would like to express my gratitude to all the webinar partners whose support has been invaluable in being able to host the IPGA Knowledge Series webinars, and we look forward to their continued support. India Pulses and Grain Association, known as IPGA, recently signed an MOU with India, increasing enterprise and sector competitiveness, capacity building in trade intelligence, market analysis, research, strengthening of trade support networks in India and Myanmar, promoting a trade and business linkages between India and Myanmar, and improving the business environment and support to trade policy formulation. Today's webinar is our first joint initiative towards achieving the objectives of MOU, and it is indeed an honor for the both associations to have a senior government dignitaries as well as a panel highly esteemed and knowledgeable panelists speaking in their webinar. As we all are aware, the Government of India has allowed imports of Tur and Moong under OGL. On the other hand, impose a stringent stock limits to all the stakeholders of value chain. We hope that Department of Consumer Affairs will take cognizance of this disparity and find a resolution to this, as we can foresee a serious bottleneck in a smooth supply of pulses in coming future. I am sure all are keenly looking forward to thoughts and guidance shared by Additional Secretary Madam and Honorable Ambassador. Sir, today's webinar, we are confident that information shared by Mr. Vatsal Lilani, Mr. Deshratna on Myanmar scenario, as well as B. Krishnamurthy and Puneet Bachawat on the inner scenario, will be of immense interest to all the participants. I welcome you once again and hope you find this webinar interesting and informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beda. I would now request Mr. Sunil Seth, President, India, Myanmar, and Myanmar Chamber of Commerce, to please share his thoughts. Mr. Seth, over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep, and namaste and minglaba to everyone. Madam Nidhi Khare, Additional Secretary, Government of Consumer Affairs, Department of Consumer Affairs, Government of India. His Excellency Ambassador Saurabh Kumar, Mr. Jitu Beda, esteemed speakers, friends, attending this webinar from IMCC and IPGA and all our associate organizations. A very, very warm welcome. I'm indeed very happy that we are having this seminar on such an important topic. IPGA and IMCC has signed an MOU quite some time back. And I think this is a beginning of a very fruitful relationship, I'm sure, because agro trade between our two countries is extremely important. And IMCC being a pivotal business chamber in Myanmar and IPGA representing all the agro importers, I think have a lot of work which we can do together. I just wanted to make three very brief points. I know Vatsal and Desh will of course discuss in details on the crop, etc. But I wanted to talk on three broad issues for broad understanding of all people who are attending this webinar. The first is that I'm very happy to say that IMCC, which was formed about 3 years back, is very, very actively looking at enhancing Myanmar and India business. And currently from a trade which is around 1.7 to 1.8 billion, our objective, at least post-COVID, was to see how we can move this to at least $5 billion in the next 3 to 4 years. That challenge remains, and I think we will work towards it. But talking specifically of agro, one thing that we would be looking at the chamber is to see how we can do direct shipping of agro commodities from Myanmar to India and vice versa. Just now, all our shipments are transshipped either in Kuala Lumpur or in Singapore. The chamber is working seriously to see how we can get maybe smaller vessels, 300 to 500 TEU vessels, which can ply directly between container terminals in Myanmar and our terminals, which are both present on the east coast and west coast of India. So that is something that we want to seriously work on, and we would request IPGA to also support us in this endeavor and see how we can talk to some shipping companies and see how to make this consistently viable. From time to time, people have been putting vessels, but now that we have a clarity and Government of India has announced for the next 5 years a particular quota, so I think there is some visibility that we have here. And overall, I think both for exporters from Myanmar as well as for importers in India, it will be a huge cash flow benefit if we are able to do direct sailing. So that was one point that I strongly wanted to park today, and something which Mr. Jitu, we should take over later after the seminar to see how we can work together on this. Of course, a challenge remains on how do you get return cargo from India back to Myanmar. So whether it is pharmaceutical or steel products or even electrical machinery, we have to do some amount of homework to see how to do a consolidation of that fragmented cargo. That is one. Second is till now Myanmar has been primarily focused on black mape, tur and green moong. Here again in IMCC we have been discussing, and we've also been taking guidance from our patron, the ambassador himself, as well as the Ministry of Agriculture, to see if we can enrich the product mix of the crops in Myanmar. Of course, depending on suitability of the soil conditions and the climate, the point we want to explore is that can we grow lentils or chickpeas, etc., or yellow peas in upper parts of Myanmar, which has colder climate? Why should one import all the way from Canada and Australia? Why not Myanmar to India? So that is something that, again, we have to put our minds together. And I would we will of course need support of Government of India. We would need support of some technical specialists to see how to really make this project work. But that's another big item which is on our agenda, which I think between IMCC and IPGA, we should take it forward. The third and my last point is regarding FOB costs. Myanmar has stiff competition now from Africa. We know all these countries, whether it's Ethiopia, Sudan, Tanzania, or Mozambique, is able to supply tur all the way from there to India at a cheaper cost. So this is something where our own chamber has to work with the agro producers here, the suppliers, look at the whole supply chain and see how we can make Myanmar competitive so that we have a sustainable business between India and Myanmar in the agro commodities space. So those were three quick points I wanted to make. And I wish that this is a good seminar and we all have a fruitful discussion, and we look forward to doing more such seminars in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Before I proceed further, I'd request all the participants to use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen to post your questions. We will be taking questions for the panelists once all the 4 presentations are over. I'm now going to invite Honorable Ambassador of India to Myanmar, Shri Saurabh Kumar, who is a BTech from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, and an MTech from Indian Institute of Technology, and joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1989. Shri Kumar has also served as Joint Secretary for Counterterrorism Policy Planning and Research in the Ministry of External Affairs, as well as Joint Secretary, National Security Council Secretariat, and was the Ambassador of India to Iran prior to taking over the responsibilities in Myanmar. Shri Saurabh Kumar, over to you, sir.
So let me congratulate IPGA, India Pulses and Grains Association, and India-Myanmar Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event. You see, as far as I'm concerned, Pulses is very important as far as India-Myanmar relationship is concerned. I recall very vividly that after presenting my credentials, this was in January 2019, in what is supposed to be a courtesy conversation with the then president of this country, he spent considerable time, talking in substantive terms about pulses trade between India and Myanmar. So you see, what happens is that in Myanmar, the farmers are hugely dependent upon pulses and its export. And as we are seeing now, there are times, when India very seriously looks at this country to get the shortfall in pulses which it has. Now, this is before I came here. I think sometime in 2017, this quota regime had been put in place. And during the period I was here, I think considerable part of my time was spent in listening to entities from the Myanmar side telling us, how we should offtake more of their production. This was not only communicated to me, but in almost every high-level interaction which happened between India and Myanmar, pulses figures very prominently. Some of you, Vatsal is out here, Sunil is out here, with whom I have been talking, Naresh talks to me. And you all point out the criticality of pulses in our bilateral trade, also from the point of view that if India does not offtake, the production patterns would shift elsewhere, or trade would get diverted elsewhere. And in times of need, the kind of situation we are facing just now, there might not be enough for Myanmar to provide. Myanmar is a very close neighbor. We have a very close relationship with Myanmar. Economic and trade relationship is a very integral and important part of this relationship. And within this, trade is the item which predominates the export from this country to India. For reasons which I needn't get into out here, more than just pulses going from here and meeting our requirements, I think there is a larger picture in terms of having a more kind of stronger relationship as far as pulses is concerned and providing it certain amount of predictability and to see what more can be done. So I was very happy that, something which had been on the table for last many years because of the situation which India faced, this MOU was pushed through and, all of us worked at breakneck speeds to get it into place as quickly as possible. This provides for a certain quota, but the exports from here to India are not limited to these amounts. I do hope that India would buy more and Myanmar would be in a position to provide more. Sunil mentioned these points, two very important points. One is to see what more can be exported from here, like lentils. And in fact, we did this exercise together and we took it ahead to the UMFCCI, which is the local chamber, and they had some discussions with the government of Myanmar. But this needs to be pursued further to see, if lentils and other varieties could be grown out here so that we can buy from Myanmar rather than from far off places like Canada. Strengthening our trade and economic relationship, as I just said, has a larger rationale, For example, we are building ports out here. Those ports need to be utilized and should have good capacity utilization. And, we are also looking at our trade diversification. So anything which contributes towards that, including additional varieties of pulses, lentils, and other things which Sunil mentioned, I think would be most welcome. The other is shipping. Now, we have a coastal shipping agreement, which I think is under discussion. That could be signed. And to see more direct ways, as was mentioned, of smaller vessels flying between India and Myanmar and having a more direct link. Those of you who are in this business know the kind of situation we had and still have as a consequence of developments in this country, where shipping was very seriously affected, the container costs skyrocketed, and this has an impact. So something which is so integral to India and Myanmar, on which both our countries are dependent, why not take a step ahead and see that if we have some kind of a direct shipping connectivity which meets the requirements. Secretary Consumer Affairs spoke to me, and my ministry was in touch with me earlier to see that impediments which might be there in terms of exports from here to India are removed. And in this context, I had conversation with Sunil and Naresh. And what I was told is that there was, things might have changed, but this is, I think, a few weeks old information, that there was a shortage of 40,000 ton capacity in terms of exports, for which charters were being done. And charters, of course, do not give that predictability, and if something more could be done. I had conveyed this to Secretary Shipping, but then I think there were limitations in terms of Shipping Corporation of India and our Ministry of Shipping, and I do not know if we were able to do much about it. But these are the kind of things, we should look at and see that these things are put in place. So overall, I think all of you know more than me in terms of the nuts and bolts of the trade. You are the people who operate on the ground. But all I would like to say from a larger perspective, that pulses are very important to India and Myanmar relationship. From my perspective, they are not to be looked upon just as one of the many commodities traded between the two countries, but has a larger resonance for the reasons I have, I mean, I haven't mentioned the reasons, but the fact that, you know, beans and pulses get mentioned in almost all the bilateral high-level conversations which India and Myanmar has, including, you know, last time when the president in February went to India, he spent a good part of time talking to the Prime Minister about beans and pulses. And fortunately, we had taken some positive steps at that point of time, which Prime Minister told the President that ABC will be happening. So keeping all this in mind, I think we should do whatever can be done to see that this trade is sustained and built up on. And this, you know, is a good exercise which is happening. I think perhaps you all could think that we can do it once or twice every export season, so that if there are any impediments, if there is anything which needs to be sorted out, could be sorted out. And I think this is a good format where, you know, you get government representatives into the meeting also, so that the message can reach directly to us and we can do whatever we can. So thank you very much. And I wish you all the very best. It is a good initiative. I have another engagement. You know, I would have liked to love and sit through this meeting, but I have my commercial attaché who would be recording things for me. Vatsal is out here, so he knows that, you know, I have pestered him often enough for very precise and minute details. So I think this was an opportunity for me to sit and get a hang of some of these things more. But the way scheduling went, I cannot sit through this, but I wish this event all the very best, and do hope that we continue with this exercise. So thank you very much once again, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your kind words. And it was definitely an honor and pleasure to have you in the webinar today. We are also having this webinar recorded, and we will be uploading it to the to our YouTube channel, and we will share a link with your office, so you can have a look at the entire webinar at your convenience at a later date.
Thank you. Thank
you. Going
forward,
thank you, sir. Going forward, I am now going to invite Mr. Puneet Bachawat, Head of Operations and Chief Financial Officer of Prakash Agro Industries, Ahmedabad, who is going to present an overview on India's Tur and Moong scenario. Mr. Puneet Bachawat, a qualified chartered accountant, is a young and dynamic leader of the industry with profound knowledge of pulses and grains, with over 15 years of experience in the field. Under Mr. Bachawat's guidance, Prakash Agro Mills has grown to become one of the leading suppliers of food grains and pulses in India and overseas. He has focused at building a global network for easy availability of food grains and pulses across the globe at economic prices. Mr. Bachawat also has vast experience in the field of finance and taxation. A visionary, he motivates his team to engage with that vision and encourages strategic thinking, innovation, and practices effective cross-cultural communications. Over to you, Mr. Bachawat. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pradeep sir. Thank you very much to all the dignitaries for their esteemed views and comments on prevailing scenario of pulses and also on bilateral relationship with Myanmar. As everyone is well aware that India has a long bilateral relationship with Myanmar on sound footings, which is duly reflected through our recent MOU. I'll be summarizing this relationship. ये दोस्ती हम नहीं तोड़ेंगे, तोड़ेंगे दम मगर तेरा साथ ना छोड़ेंगे. I hope that this relationship will grow by leaps and bounds in years to come. Hello friends, good afternoon ladies and gentlemen and all my business associates around the world. I am CA Puneet Bachawat, CEO Prakash Agro Mills Ahmedabad, My father, Shri Prakash Chand Bachawat, is visionary founder of Prakash Agriculture. I thank you, IPGA and Indian Myanmar Chamber of Commerce for providing me this platform. I welcome all the esteemed dignitaries present here. Friends, today I'll be covering two areas in our discussion. And I'll be presenting this with the slide. Sure. So our points of discussion would be Tuar and Moong scenario and its consumption pattern in India, and impact of change in import policy and bilateral trade. Well, I would like to say, sir, our first slide shows production of Moong and Tuar in India and its estimated figures for current year, taking into weather account fluctuation. It can be seen from the above table that in 2020-21, there was a 3% decrease in production of Tuar, and we estimate another 3-4% year-on-year decrease in 2021 and 22. It can be seen from the above table that due to unfavorable weather condition of Tuar, production is decreasing every year. And friends, in fact, it is very difficult to predict the estimate that till it reaches farmers go down. Tuar is one-time crop sown in India in different states, and reaping time is 180 days. Tuar starts arriving in October onwards. Major states producing Tuar in India are Andhra, Telangana, Karnataka, Maharashtra, MP, and Gujarat. Further in India, Tuar sowing is intercrop with soybean and cotton. And in India, only 30% of crop is under irrigation, and rest depends on monsoon. Therefore, state-wise production varies every year. In India, as you know, friends, farmers are very rate sensitive, and therefore they interchange the commodity. Likewise, this year, farmers are more interested in soybean in compared to other pulses. However, Indian government is increasing MSP every year and hence encouraging farmer for sowing of pulses. Similarly, you will observe in Moong that production is continuously increasing every year. Moong is a 90 days crop and it is cultivated in almost all parts of the country. If weather favors, then Maharashtra and Rajasthan produces almost 80% of total crop. My above contention and of shifting pattern of farmers is very much evident by looking at bumper summer crop in MP, almost catering the entire demand of India. Since MSP of Moong is highest among all pulses, which is 7 to 7.5 rupees quintal. Yes, my friend, 7 to 7.5 rupees per quintal. Therefore, farmers are more inclined towards sowing of Moong. This year, earlier monsoon was well in time in country, but now it seems to be in doldrums. Therefore, it is giving alarming situation of great loss of kharif crop of Moong in Maharashtra and Karnataka. If monsoon rain does not start, then sowing in Gujarat and Rajasthan will also be affected. Now I move towards consumption of Tuar and Moong in India. Amongst all pulses, you know, friends, chana is the highest consumed commodity in India, followed by Tuar and Moong. As India grows economically, the per capita consumption of pulses will increase. Presently, per capita consumption is 48 grams, and government intends to increase it to 60 grams because this is the major protein source for needy people. The consumption is also increasing on account of free as well as subsidized distribution under welfare schemes of government like PMGKY, PDS, MDM, and ICDS. Therefore, there will be almost 25% increase in demand from present level in coming years. And this gap is likely to be filled through imports and more production. Last year, friends, unfortunately, whole world faced a pandemic of COVID, which reduced consumption in every item, including pulses. Due to lockdown, hotels, restaurants, religious places, etc., all were closed, which had impact on consumption on last year, 2021. But we expect to recover it in 21-22 as there are no stricter lockdowns. Now we cover imports of Tuar and Moong in India. The rates and availability of pulses is very sensitive, and therefore, as and when there is shortage of pulses, India allows imports to OGL, Miller quota, and ICM. Since this year, there seems to be a lesser availability of tuar and moong. Government has allowed pulses under OGL till 31st October. We are expecting good quantity of import of pulses. We can see, friends, as per trade estimates, the imports will almost double this year. Friends, this slide depicts the opening stock for the year 2021-22. As per our trade estimates, government agencies will be having 3.44 lakh tons of tuar. Traders and millers are having 3.5 lakh tons of tuar. Tuar carry forward stock has increased due to low consumption in year 2021. Dear friends, the price scenario changes every day, and therefore an agri trader has to be in constant touch with market and long-term trend prediction. Sorry. We have signed, Government of India has signed MOU with the following countries: Malawi, 50,000 tons, Myanmar, 1 lakh MT tons of tuar, and Mozambique. The total import is of the MOU signed is of 2 lakh MT, out of which as per trade estimate, 1,50,000 MT will be of tuar and 50,000 MT will be of moong. With a vision to double farmers' income, Government of India has been continuously increasing MSP prices year on year. The increase in MSP prices has encouraged farmers of India, who are backbone of economy, to sow more pulses and make India Atmanirbhar in pulses. We can see from the price chart that in 2020-21, the MSP was 6,000 rupees per quintal, and it has been increased to 6,300 rupees per quintal. And moong, it was 7,196 rupees per quintal, and it has been increased on 7,275 rupees per quintal. Monsoon has major impact on agri production in India. Initial forecast by IMD was for monsoon was for 94 to 106%. Although monsoon arrived in Calcutta on time, Kerala on time, but dry patch has been created across the states. If in next 15 days there is no adequate rainfall, farmers may opt to resow the crop. Friends, the most important trend for which everyone is waiting for, the price trend. The market price of tuar in India is around 6,000 to 6,200 rupees per quintal, which is around MSP. MSP of tuar in India has been increased to 300 rupees per quintal. Dear friends, the price scenario changes every day, and therefore an agri trader has to be in constant touch with market, and long-term prediction is very difficult. As you are aware that initial monsoon was good, but with a long dry spell, entire scenario has changed. Presently, price of tuar is near to MSP, and in future also, we expect plus minus 3 to 5% to MSP. With the opening of import and stock control in near future, prices will remain stable and there will be availability of tuar in market. Market price of moong in India is around 5,800 to 6,000 rupees per quintal. Due to bumper summer crop of MP recently, which is about 1 lakh MP, the prices of moong has decreased by almost 10 rupees per kg. Moong has been exempted from recent stock limit, and rainfall in Maharashtra and Rajasthan is delayed the main sowing areas of moong, which may impact prices of moong. In short term, prices may range between 6,000 to 6,500 rupees per quintal. Now we come to our final point of discussion. We have seen frequent changes in import and export policy with regards to pulses. And therefore, to increase more volumes and further strengthening of relations, a long-term policy for certain period is to be worked out with consensus of all. Then both side farmers and cultivators will have a clear-cut view about future of their products. And in turn, this will encourage them to use their resources judicially. Bilateral trade is the exchange of goods between two countries. Promoting trade, therefore, efforts must be made to reduce trade barriers with a long-term policy. Further, regular meetings should be arranged to remove any confusion. I will end with a quote. A real friend is one who walks in when the rest of the world walks out. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bachawat. Quite a few interesting numbers that you showcased there. And yes, definitely that the delay or the dry patches that have come into the monsoon getting a little slowed down could probably create some ripples in the sowing and ultimate production. But let's now go over to Myanmar and see what is the prognosis for tour in Myanmar. And I'm going to invite Mr. Vatsal Lilani, Managing Director, Evertop Commodities, who holds a master's in marketing and has worked with G Premji Limited for 14 years across Thailand, Toronto, and Dubai as Vice President Marketing, following which he spent 15 years with the Noble Group handling the pulses vertical for China and Myanmar. He now heads Evertop Commodities as the Managing Director based in Myanmar and trades in pulses and sugar from various origins worldwide. So, Vatsalji, it's over to you, and we look forward to it.
Thank you, Pradeep. Good afternoon, everybody, and many thanks to IPGA and IMCC for having asked me to talk about tour and its prospects. Today, we shall discuss the current situation with the trade for tour and what can be done going forward to restore the volumes that were once traded. In the years prior to 2017, which is when the quantitative restrictions were introduced, the crop in Myanmar was between 250 and 300,000 tons. Africa then was not much of a factor as it is today, and India primarily looked to Myanmar to cover its deficit. Myanmar tour production in 2015 was 300,000 tons, but it slid now to 80,000 tons this year, as the farmers are not sure if India has the requirement to take a volume such as 250,000 tons, which was very normal earlier. In January this year, when the Myanmar crop started, there was a carry forward of 45,000 tons, comprising of 2016, 2018, 19, and 20 crops in stock. So from a point of almost no carry stock in 2015 and 16, we had a leftover of different crop years available, and much of it is still there. The question on the minds of everyone is there merit in allowing Myanmar once again to ship the 250,000 tons like earlier, whether it be through the MOU mechanism or import quotas or a mix of both? The first point to note is that India accounts for almost 80% of the tour demand from Myanmar. There is virtually no local consumption, and UAE and Nepal are the only two other buyers, but they're much smaller. 2016 and 17 were bumper production years for pulses in India, and there was a very genuine concern in India that if the imports were not restricted, the local Indian farmer could be further distressed, as the prices had already dropped below the MSP rates. Rightfully so, the Indian government acted. They had no option but to. However, the tour crop in Myanmar gets planted in July, and by the time the Indian announcement came for tour on 22nd of August 2017, most of the 2017 planting was already done. Therefore, we naturally had a very large harvest in Myanmar in December 2017, also because at the time of planting, the prices were very high. The offtake then from India in 2018, 19, and 20 got substantially lower, progressively lower, reducing from about 240,000 tons in 2015 to just 150,000 tons last year, leading to record carry forward stocks in Myanmar into every successive next season. Now, mind you, the Myanmar farmer was growing tuar for over 20 years, but now he had to look for other crops to replace tuar. It wasn't easy because the seeds had to be freshly procured and the sales channels had to be created. The farmers zeroed in on cash crops such as sesame seeds, maize, and cotton, which are demand from across the border from China and Thailand. Maize also has a very robust internal demand from the feed industry. The maturing time for tuar is 6 months, as the farmer plants it in July and the harvest is done in December, Jan. So the farmer has to take the price and the weather risk over a longer period as compared to sesame, for instance, which is only a 100-day duration crop. There is a ready market in China across the land border for sesame, maize, and buyers have their agents in production centers to disperse cash on the spot. Whereas in the case of tuar, the process to payment is much longer. In the case of sesame seed, you typically have one brother sitting at the China border town, another person that goes around to the various production areas during the harvest time for collection. The trucks are loaded to be sent to the border, and as soon as that is done, the cash is paid immediately to the farmer. For tuar, the farmer has to send material to his agent in Rangoon, and he receives the money after the material is sold to an exporter. But on the flip side, tuar requires very little effort to grow and is easier on the farmer in terms of cost. So if there is a ready and continuous market, the farmer would definitely prefer to grow tuar. We all know that when a country like India decides on a quota, there are many factors that are considered by their decision makers. It is not just the demand and supply of the product, but the actions directly affecting a bordering nation have also got to be taken into account. So the MOU number of 100,000 tons, I'm sure, is a very well considered one. But from a trade perspective, there is a very strong feeling that a number significantly higher of the MOU quantity would have had the following 4 benefits. India's consumption is about 4 million tons. 100,000 tons is just about 2.5% of it. But this 2.5% has a huge influence on prices on the other 97%. This is because demand and supply are evenly balanced. So small change in quantity has a disproportionate opposite influence on prices. Secondly, till recently, Indian pulse production depended on rains to a very large extent. Today, we have an added uncertainty, which is unseasonal rains at the harvest time, as we have seen in the past few years. So a higher MOU quantity would provide insurance against that, because the Myanmar farmer would be incentivized to grow more. The third point is that once the farmer migrates to growing a different crop, it becomes very difficult to bring him back. Large regions in Sagaing, which was the main area for production of tuar, have already moved away, and farmers have no desire to grow tuar again unless they see a pattern of consistent demand. We do not want the remaining farmers who are still growing tuar to consider moving away. And perhaps the Indian government should consider increasing the MOU quantity, as that shall bring many of the central Burma farmers back to growing tuar. This additional quantity shall be just a fraction of India's consumption, but it shall have a great price moderating effect on the full 100%, because it shall dissuade hoarding and speculation due to ample availability of the material. In my view, providing assurance of this higher quantity is a very cost-effective method to regulate prices in India of a very staple and sensitive commodity. And lastly, the fourth factor to keep in mind is that as per Bloomberg, the demand for meat-based protein has reduced by about 4% in the US, because younger consumers have reduced their animal protein intake for reasons such as better health, climate change, and emission of greenhouse gases. It's a trend that is fast spreading, and it's also due to the sharp rise in prices of animal feed ingredients like corn and soybean meal. This trend shall exert pressure on pulses, which are a natural replacement within the protein food family. So I think it makes a lot of sense for India and other pulse-consuming countries to keep their supply sources intact. That said, my request and suggestion is fourfold. Number one, that an increase in the MOU quantity with Myanmar should be considered. Number two, once the OGL period lapses in the month of October, the import license quantity should be announced for a 5-year period so that Myanmar and African growers can plan their production. Third, when import licenses are issued, they should be for a minimum of 125 tons and in multiples of 25 tons, which is the capacity of each container. This is because the minimum economic quantity for shipment is 125 tons. So you can go 125, 150, 175, and multiples of 25. And my last suggestion is that if the total import license quantity for a year is decided at, say, 400,000 tons, which is what it was last year, then the algorithmic selection should permit 100,000 tons per quarter, so that the shipments are not bunched together, they're spaced out over a period of the full year, and they do not lead to unnecessary hike in the FOB price or the freight. Now, India is blessed with suppliers in both the hemispheres, Africa in the south and Myanmar in the north. Both have different crop seasons. So limiting the import quantity per quarter to 100,000 tons shall allow a flow of material that should be moderate and in a way that the MSP collection in India is not disturbed. Now coming to containers and freight rates. Container rates to Chennai last year in the month of October were about $400 a container, but they jumped to $3,000 last month, and they've receded to $2,100 this month. This volatility is because the shipping industry was suffering losses since 2009, since the Lehman crisis took place, and therefore did not get adequate investments over the last 10 years. Suddenly, the demand-supply mismatch got aggravated with containers getting stuck in North America due to COVID, the Suez Canal incident, and the sinking of a large container vessel off the coast of Sri Lanka. In my view, this mismatch shall continue for some more time because new vessel building shall take years to come on the market, and economic growth has started accelerating with increased vaccinations. Now in Myanmar, what we have done is, in order to moderate the freight rates, we have started using break bulk vessels because they can carry up to 20,000 tons, which is the equivalent of 800 containers at one go. In order to ensure that the qualities like Black Medpay, FAQ, SQ, tour hole do not get mixed up, and the bags are strong enough and do not bleed, we have told our suppliers to use different color bags and ensure that the outer bag is brand new and is of a minimum 125 grams stare weight. Suppliers have told us that this shall be possible going forward, but it is not possible for the material that is already packed. We feel these two measures shall dramatically improve the experience of shipping and receiving cargo by break bulk. We in Myanmar fully recognize that we shall have to use both these methods to ship break bulk and containers to keep the freight rates from getting unreasonable. Now, talking about the COVID situation in Myanmar, there is no disruption either in terms of shipping or securing certificates. The only scramble that we have is that couriers are operating just once a week, which is a Sunday flight. So if documents such as a phyto certificate are received in the shipper's office on a Monday in Rangoon and need to be couriered, they will have to wait till the following Sunday, which can be a bit of a challenge when you're shipping directly to Chennai on direct vessels, which just take 3 days to get there. But having said that, I think out of all the disruptions that one could possibly face, this is possibly the least that one can expect to face. I'm putting up the crop numbers for the reference. I'm sure a lot of people are waiting for it, and we shall discuss that. Can you see it? So we'll just go through the numbers. Sorry?
From the share screen.
No, it's not being updated. The screen share is not on.
Oh, okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yes, we can see.
Okay, so let us take the numbers for, when we started this year, 2021, we had an opening stock of 45,000 tons. I know different panelists in the past, in the last 2-3 months, have given different numbers, but I'm giving a number that I can sort of defend and be comfortable with. Opening stock of 45,000 tons, 2021 crop, I put it at 80,000 tons. shipments that have already occurred and contracted but not yet shipped, my estimation is 35,000 tons. And this number I've, after discussing with various members of IMCC, I've estimated this number. This is still the month of June. So we still have a balance of 90,000 tons between now and the end of the year, which is when the new crop comes. Even as far as export numbers are concerned, it depends on what your source is. You could either get it from one of the ministries, or you could get it from MSR, which is a private research organization, which is where I've gotten it from. And these numbers are total figures for all the countries, for all the destinations. I managed to get separate numbers for the years of 2015 and 2020. I've not been able to do that for 2016 to 19 because they bunched everything in beans. So they were not able to segregate exactly as to what it was for Tuar. But these are the numbers. So you can see that from 280,000 tons, we are down to 180,000 tons. And, if we don't do something quickly, this will go down even further, which is why the 4 requests that I made for the authorities to consider. But that said, we come to the end of my presentation. Once again, many thanks to IPGA and IMCC for having selected me as a speaker. And thank you again.
Vatsal, you can stop sharing. You need to stop sharing screen, Vatsal.
Okay.
Thank you, Vatsal, for those numbers and your thoughts. But yes, we have kept the Q&A for the end, but I can't resist asking you this question basis few points that you made. Assuming for a moment that the government of India does decide to increase the MOU quantities or extend OGLs or whichever way, what is the level of production for Tuar currently in Myanmar, and to what level can it be scaled up to? That's one part of the question. Second part of the question is, how does that map against the production abilities in Africa for the same product Tuar? And third part of it is, given that the Tuar harvest time is pretty close to the same as in India for the crop, how will that affect the production in India? What is your estimate on that? What's your thought?
Okay, Pradeep, I'll take question numbers 1 and 3 because the second one is for Africa, which I'm not very conversant with. Your first question was what the quantity should be as far as either the MOU or the import license is concerned, and what is it that...
No, sir, my question is, what is the current production level, and to what level can it be scaled up if the environment is conducive for imports of Tuar from Myanmar? Like you said, if the quantity is increased for the MOU, how much can the Myanmar farmers scale it up from current? What's the current level and how much can it scale up?
Okay, understood. So the current level is about between 80 to 100,000 tons, depending on which person you ask this question to. As far as scaling up is concerned, I think we can easily go up to 300,000 tons. With the right sort of incentive and motivation to the farmer, it can be scaled up to 300,000 tons without a problem. So if you're looking at a total consumption in India of 4 million tons, you're looking at less than 10% coming out of Myanmar. Your second question was how it would affect, because we have the same, we share the same sort of production cycle, Myanmar and India. But see, this has been there for a very long time. I mean, Myanmar has been shipping to India for the last 20 years. And, your crop period and Myanmar crop period has been the same. I don't think it has sort of irritated the Indian production in any way, because we all know that India is short. And when you have 2 ports, which is Mumbai and Chennai, receiving the material, it is those ports and the consumers who are closer to those areas, the mills closer to the area, which are going to be using the imported material. The ones that are in the hinterland would be using the desi material. I mean, this is the way it has been for a long time. Until there is a shortage in the hinterland and they start buying it from the ports. I think they sort of complement each other. I don't think there is crossing of wires in any way.
And just one last question. I don't really know whether it would be too big a difference, but with the change of shipping mode that you all are planning because of the container availability issues, is it going to affect the final pricing, landed price for tour from just the
No.
containers to doing break bulk and the double bagging and everything, different color bags?
Okay,
So
so it's
that
a
will
good
affect the
question.
price, landed price for tour?
No, so it's a good question. So let me reply in detail. I think when you receive cargo and break bulk, typically what happens at the ports is that they disperse 95% of the BL quantity and the balance 5% is held back, which is then given pro rata depending on the BL quantity. But when you have a stronger bag, then the CHA, is incentivized to give out as much as 98%. And when you have an $800 commodity, that extra 3% is almost $25 a ton. So I think by spending $1 or $2 extra for a better bag, you're sort of making it much more convenient for the buyer, for the receiver, to accept break bulk shipments. This is one. Secondly, today you're having an 80-gram bag. Instead of 80, you're migrated to 125. Difference is very marginal. But because you put a 125-gram bag, you have the option of either loading it in containers or loading it in break bulk without spending anything extra. So I think those $2 are well worth it. Now, coming to the freight difference between break bulk and containers, today the container freight is about $85 a ton. If you look at the break bulk, freight that people have paid, it is well under that. The other saving is the THC, because when you get material in containers, you got to pay the THC, which is pretty steep. In the case of break bulk, that particular expense is not to be paid. So overall, I think break bulk is definitely better value if you are able to make sure that your bags are strong enough, that there is no bleeding. The cargo should not arrive in bulk, although it is shipped in bags. And that the labor, what happens at the ports is that the labor is incentivized to throw the bag at the closest pile that they see. Now, they might be having black mat pay SQ, but if there is an FAQ pile very close by, they'll just go and empty it on that pile. And then how do you separate it? So if you have a different color, which is what we're going to do, we're going to have white for FAQ, pink for SQ, and yellow for the tour. Then the labor knows exactly as to which pile to put it in. And if he doesn't do it correctly, then the supervisor can tell him that, listen, hey man, you can't be putting it on that pile. So, when you have this color scheme put in place, it becomes very easy to monitor it.
When is the first such shipment expected to leave Myanmar?
There are 2 vessels under loading at the moment. I think the first one should leave the middle of next week, as what I was informed yesterday. But it again depends on how the weather is between now and then. And the second one, which is a larger vessel, which is about 21,000 tons, again depends on the weather. But if the weather is the way it is today, it might take about 10 days to leave.
I think, okay. So we'll get an idea. We'll probably get a good feedback from the importers here in India as to how the break bulk color-coded bags is working in terms of convenience and while offloading and distribution.
Yeah, but we have not been able to do it.
Thank you so much, Vatsal. Thank you once again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on now, I'm now going to invite Mr. Desh Ratna, Treasurer and Executive Committee Member of India Myanmar Chamber of Commerce. Desh, thank you very much for stepping in at the last minute and helping us out since Mr. Dinodia is unwell. Desh holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the Birla Institute of Technology and a master's in international business from the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade in New Delhi, and is an experienced global agri-commodities trader with a rich industry experience of over 25 years. Desh has worked in all parts of the agri value chain, upstream in farming, midstream, as well as downstream distribution, retail branding of food products. He has traveled widely across continents and is a certified trader on the ACDX exchange for commodity trading, along foreign currency trading on NSE exchange. He has been recognized by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research for best practice programs in farming sector and has been awarded Entrepreneur Award for 2016 by global MNCs. On behalf of Mr. Denodia, Managing Director PL Global Impacts, Desh will be presenting on the pulses business scenario in Myanmar with a focus on Urad and Moong. Over to you, Desh.
Thank you, Pradeep, for a nice introduction. Mingla Bar, Namaste, and good day to everyone. My name is Desh Ratna, and I will be presenting on behalf of Mr. Denodia on two products. One is black mapte and the green beans. Let me straight away come to the presentation slide. Okay, let me talk about the Myanmar as a country. We have 54 million population, and mainly the population is dominated in two centers. One is Yangon, the second is in the upper Myanmar, that is Mandalay. These are 2019 data. Over a period of time, it has changed. But what you can see drastically on the bottom of the chart is the currency, how the currency, local currency has devaluated. Currently, it is hovering at around 1650 chat to a dollar. It's a net import country, and majority of the exports are from the natural gas, and rice is one of the major commodity apart from pulses and beans. The imports are mainly on the petroleum products, fertilizers, construction materials. Major crops which are grown are the rice, beans, pulses, yellow maize, sesame, sugarcane, and rubber also. We have seaports, almost 9 seaports are spread around Yangon city. So traditionally, how the pulses story began somewhere in 1970s, when it is all pioneered by Mr. Naresh's father, Mr. Pyare Lal, who was one of the pioneers in starting the pulses and beans between Myanmar and India. So early 90s, when Myanmar was transitioned into market economy, and also with the opening of the 1991 liberation program of government of India, market actually boosted up for the trade between India and Myanmar. India almost contributes to around 65% of the pulses and beans, and it has been consistent for the last 5 years. India is one of the highly dependent on pulses, apart from Canada and other countries from Myanmar as well. Total import to India from Myanmar is roughly around 7 lakh metric tons, which is approximately 28% of what Myanmar imports from Myanmar consist of. And total from Myanmar is 15 lakh tons, amounting to $1.1 billion. Myanmar grows around 24 types of beans and pulses. Black mapte, tuor, and moong beans almost contribute 70% of the total pulses in Myanmar. Some of the pulses and beans which are grown in Myanmar are on your screen. You can look at this. Mainly black gram, green gram, and pigeon beans. As I said, it contributes about 70 to 80% of the total production volume. In terms of agricultural practices, pulses are mainly grown after the harvest of the rice season, which is mainly in October, November. And it is harvested somewhere around in March and April. So majority of the pulses are actually sown in the month of October. There is also a dry season crop, which is monsoon crop, which is basically grown in the central plain areas in Shan State and Bago region. But if you compare between the two seasons, 70% of the total beans and pulses are grown in the winter season. And the yield is ranging between 1 to 1.3 million metric tons per hectare. So there is a huge possibility, which I'll talk about in the future slides, where technological intervention can be required, right from the farming stage till the processing stage. As I mentioned earlier, black mapte, moong bean, and tuor, they account roughly around 70 to 78% of the total pulses production. And they are also by virtue the largest exported varieties out of Myanmar. So 80 to 90%, as Mr. Vatsal also said, very low quantity is consumed in Myanmar with the local people, and mainly it is exportable product. So tuar is 80-90% exportable, and 70-80% of the black mapte is exported to India. Green gram over a period of time, though the production has increased, it is mainly catering to China and other Far East market due to the close proximity which China has across the border trade. So this slide will give you an idea, how the global pulses export market is divided. So Canada contributes roughly 22% of the global export traded share, where Myanmar is almost 8%. So in terms of India. So looking at this slide in terms of pulses production, it is overall pulses and beans production which is happening in Myanmar. If you look at 5 years data, overall production has gradually come down. The prime reason is that, because of certain policies of government of India, the farmer confidence in terms of growing pulses and continuing on the basis of the growing has come down. And slowly they have shifted to the crops like yellow maize or sesame or any other crop, soybean and all. So the green gram production, though it has increased, it is basically going to the cross-border trade into China. So roughly 15 lakh tons are totally exported out of Myanmar, in which share of India is roughly around 7 lakh tons. So in 5 years of time, if you see the production of the pulses has come down from 50 lakh tons to 40 lakh tons. So in terms of varietal, how the production is divided, if you see, again, black gram, green gram, pigeon peas, they again contribute the maximum one, as I mentioned earlier. So in terms of geographical spread out of sowing of pulses, mainly you will see in the Delta region, which is again Ayarwadi region, then Bago region is again dominated by, by the pulses growing regions. So these are some of the data which shows how the pulses export has been happening for the last 7-8 years. And majority of the dip has happened in 2017. So 3 crops, green gram, black gram, pigeon peas, is contributing the maximum pulses export out of Myanmar. This slide basically talks about if India is not buying where exactly the pulses are going. So green gram, basically, as I said, it's across the border trade. China is buying in huge quantity, then Indonesia, Singapore, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and similarly black gram as well. So though India buys black gram, it is also going to Pakistan, UAE, Bangladesh. So on black mapte, if you see, there are variety of products which is available. It started with one ordinary, quality, then which was traded to India earlier. Then other varietal also came in, like FAQ, FQ, SQ, and now SSQ is also coming up, where we are trading with Japan. So how do we look, the numbers for the black mapte this year? So on the right side, if you see, for 2021, we had the opening of carry forward stock of 28,000 tons. We expect a crop to be exported roughly 5,50,000. Till date, we have exported 2,50,000. So we expect another 2.5 lakh tons to happen by this year end. This year, if you see, we started with a slow movement since 16th March and was still, due to the local conditions, political situation, the supply was slightly, slowed down. But in the last 4 or 5 months, we had a good export of almost 1,80,000 to 2 lakh tons. And mainly in June, the volumes actually exploded. So once this opening up of imports happened from India, we witnessed, certain movement of vessels, a certain movement of orders coming from India. June itself saw a multitude of direct vessels and also direct container vessels between the first 3 weeks of June. And mainly it went to Kolkata, Naseva, Chennai. Roughly 1 lakh had moved into Chennai. Mainly black mapte, almost 80% is black mapte. Now coming to green gram. So green gram, roughly, earlier India was importing green gram, but over a period of time, with the self-sufficiency that happened in India, the volumes being traded from Myanmar to India has drastically come down. Myanmar does produce 4 varieties of green moong bean like Anya Shiva, Khampedi, Bago, Tongi, Pokaku, and Wakema. China is one of the major buyers across.
Desh, can I interrupt you for one moment? There's a bar at the bottom about the screen sharing. There's a hide button there. Can you hide that because the last line is getting covered by that? No, right at the bottom there. Thank you. Continue, please.
Yeah. So I was talking about the 4 major varieties of green moong bean, which is basically grown in Myanmar and traded also. And it mainly goes to the Asian countries. And China is one of the largest buyers across the border. The moong production, actually, it has grown in Myanmar because the consumption from China has actually enabled the farmers to grow more moong. And the farm economics also helps them to grow moong more to cater to China border. Apart from China, Vietnam and Philippines are also some of the countries which import green moong. So as I mentioned earlier, farmers shifted from BMP to moong for China requirement, which is a ready cash for them. Estimated export of green moong beans around 4.5 lakh metric tons with little quantity carryover stock for the next year. That's the projection. As mentioned earlier, India has a marginal import from Myanmar and import green moong bean mainly from Tanzania if needed be. The last few years, Indian import of green moong bean has been restricted to few containers. Also, we got some news that, as one of the panelists has spoken about moong in the earlier session, that the availability of moong is going to be higher, roughly 4% higher. So that is one of the reasons why there will be no such trade flow or very little trade flow from Myanmar into India for green moong bean. These are the last 3-4 years prices, how the prices for each commodity like black gram, pigeon peas, green gram has behaved. So what are the challenges which Myanmar has in terms of the crops which is available for exports? So we have a high dependency on the single market. So market diversification is something which we should look out for. And you see gradually how other countries like UAE, Pakistan, Vietnam, Japan, all these countries have come up in terms of their requirement fulfillment from Myanmar. Freight, as also mentioned by other panelists, has become high during past season. Right, the container availability is also a big constraint. From $400 to FCL to almost $2,000 FCL, we are witnessing. Logistic cost is very high in this period of time from village to the port area. Current challenges on the banking front, where liquidity is a big concern, is also one of the concerns for the local traders and also the other stakeholders. Vessel loading constraint we are facing due to rains, which is currently happening in Myanmar. We have certain challenges in terms of modernization of the storage and processing within this pulses sector. One of the major challenges, earlier, I think President has spoken about the quality of seed which is required for all these crops so that the productivity at the farm level or yield to grow up. We definitely look out for LC payment within India-Myanmar relationship, which might enhance the business volume. More flexibility in terms of, or more understanding on the quota and policy front from India perspective. More direct vessel, I think people have spoken about. Short vessel, low in weight quantity can move between two countries. And digitalization of the documents are required for FICO and COL. What we see in this scenario for black market, irrespective of the government policies, prices will remain range bound and will be on the upper side post-August. Farmers at Myanmar have been highly demotivated by the traditional trade flow to India due to policies. And this is again a personal, and I would put a disclaimer here, and they might stay away from sowing pulses and would rather prefer soybean, peanuts, or yellow maize, instead of other commodities and pulses. Constraint in logistics of the freight for container movement is a challenge in this current scenario for all the commodities, not only pulses, but even for the rice we see. And though it's getting better in the last few weeks, but the challenges remain the same. Vessel loads are a better option for movement of cargo at this stage. One of the appeal we wanted to make to the Indian counterparts to come and invest in the quality seed production program or in the farm mechanization program, which will help basically the farmers to have a better yield of their crops. Maybe post-harvest crop management can also be looked at. The government of Myanmar would be happy to invite you and work jointly with you to study and execute these farm-based work, which can be a good possibility. Possibility of growing pulses like red lentils, which again President IMCC mentioned about. The white paper was prepared and submitted to UMFCCI, our local chamber, where India roughly imports 4.5–5 lakh tons of red lentils from Canada. Can this upper Myanmar location can be studied for growing the red lentils, and evacuation can happen from Myanmar into India? That's the study has been done by me primarily and presented to the UMFCCI through chamber, through IMCC. So we are jointly studying this, and we are happy to invite anybody who would like to participate in this program. Let me thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Desh. You can stop the screen sharing. Thank you very much, Desh, for those numbers. And I would now like to invite Mr. B. Krishnamurthy, Managing Director for Chennai, a qualified chartered accountant and company secretary. He started this business with his younger brother over 2 decades back, after having well-established and reputed group of companies having worked with different companies in managerial capacity for over 15 years. Hope International is into the business of trading and milling of pulses, primarily Urad, or as we know, black matte, for the last 2 decades. And since its inception and under the leadership of Mr. Krishnamurthy, has generated enormous goodwill and acquired the reputation in the Indian and international markets as an organization known to honor its commitments. Mr. Krishnamurthy has also served as the Secretary of Tamil Nadu Pulses Importers and Exporters Association and represented the industry with Chennai Customs, Port, and other authorities to resolve various issues and problems faced by the trade. Mr. Krishnamurthy has been kind enough to be a part of a number of panel discussions that IPGA has hosted in the past, including our biennial conclave, that is the Pulses Conclave. Over to you, Mr. Krishnamurthy.
Thank you, Pradeep, for a nice introduction and kind words. Well, I will. Hello, distinguished guests, distinguished panelists, and friends and colleagues from India industry. Good afternoon to all of you. At the outset, I want to thank IPGA for this opportunity. And as all of you may know, that our company is into trading and milling of Urad. Before we get to the the real issues like demand, supply, price behavior, and sowing and climate and all that, I just want to speak a few words about what exactly is Urad, which we are consuming day in and day out. Let us understand what is this commodity about. Black gram, is also known as Urad or black matte in international parlance, or Moong in botanical, language. I would say, is a nature's gift to humanity. Why I am saying is a nature's gift to humanity? Because Urad dal is filled with magnesium, phosphorus, iron, potassium, calcium, and you name everything is there. Vitamin B complex, copper, zinc, dietary fiber, etc. I mean, you have all healthy ingredients, filled in this black gram. So this is a different type of pulse altogether when compared to other legumes. I don't think there is any other legume which gives you so many health benefits. Coming to this Urad, this is a very popular pulse, mainly in South India, and is extensively used in breakfast snacks, like all of you know, like idli, vada, dosa, etc. Now, of course, consumption is not limited to South India. It is spread across the country, and I would say across many regions in the world. The one most important health benefit I forgot to mention is, black gram is one legume. It offers a content which is gluten-free. Therefore, it makes a very safe protein source who have celiac diseases and for those who are looking for gluten-free products. And very well, nowadays, there is so much of demand for gluten-free products. So black gram fits quite well there. And it's also very good for skin and hair. And with so many health benefits this legume offers, I would in fact say that our governments at state level and the center level should make consumption of Urad mandatory every day for every human being. This is just not a commodity. It is something special. Urad is something special. It is not like other legumes. Okay, now coming to the crops, Urad is grown as Rabi and Kharif. Out of production from India, Rabi contributes approximately 25%. The balance, 75% approximately, comes from Kharif. And a peculiar aspect of Urad is it is grown mainly in only 2 countries in the whole world. Unlike Tuar, which is grown across some 10 countries, and Moong, of course, maybe some 50-20 countries. Urad is grown in only 2 countries. One is India and the other one is Myanmar. A very special, I would call it a peculiar characteristic of Urad is that it doesn't have a substitute. Unlike other pulses like Tuar, which has alternatives like lentils and peas. For example, if Tuar production is low and inadequate to meet the demand, consumers can shift to other pulses like peas or lentils, which offer similar taste and protein content. But whereas if Urad is scarce and if Urad is inadequate, there is no choice for the consumers. Maybe that we have to forego, buying it. But you cannot have an alternative, legume for black gram. That is a very special aspect of Urad. And another very important special characteristic of this particular pulse is a consumer who uses Urad dal by converting dal into batter gets much higher volumes than the volume of dal itself. For example, a kilogram of dal, when used in batter form, the same kilogram becomes much higher in volumes, like let us say more than 3 kilograms of batter. That in turn offers the user a high level of cost competitiveness. Therefore, the consumer gets a very high yield, basically. This pulse offers a very great alternative at a much cheaper price while providing the user all the good benefits under the sun. So that makes Urad a special pulse. I never looked in my life Urad just as a commodity. It is something much special. Only that you should have the time to understand, look at it, and see and feel the pulse inside the, that Urad seed. Black gram is a very versatile ingredient, and it is used wholly with husk and without husk, and in split shape with husk and without husk. India, we have been meeting our domestic needs by steadily improving domestic crop size while importing the shortfall only from Myanmar. Our dependence on Myanmar has, in the recent years, been steadily going down, mainly for the reason that the domestic crop size has been steadily going down. If one looks at the figures of crop size in India given by the Ministry of Agriculture, you will find that in 2010-11, we grew only 1.7 million tons of Urad, whereas in 2018-19, that is after 8 years, the crop size went up to 3 million tons. So that's a huge jump of approximately some 70% in approximately 7 years. During the last 4 years, that means since August 2017, in order to give better and remunerative price to the farmers, because our crop size has been going up, Government of India took some policy decisions and then, put imports under quota system, which has very recently been again removed and then brought back under OGL, of course, for a very brief period up to 31st of October. Farmers are constantly encouraged, to shift from other crops to pulses, as they find this crop to be very remunerative, because the cost of growing is very, very low. By increasing the minimum support price, the government has been steadily increasing and consistently, improving the price level of MSP from 2,900 rupees per quintal a decade ago to now 6,000 rupees, which will again go up to 6,300 rupees after 3 months' time. Now, I will come to the consumption or demand part. Frankly, I have not been able to come across a very authentic data which gives a precise idea of how much Urad is being consumed in India. Some say this is 24 lakh tons per annum. Some say this is more than 30 lakh tons per annum. Some say it is 36 lakh tons per annum, etc., etc. So what I have done, I tried to do a small back of the palm calculation. We have 138 crores population in India in 2021. This is an estimated population. Out of this 138 crores, I deduct 8 crores as being infants and others like, quite elderly and others, who are, sick and who have been patients. They can't eat, this particular one. Therefore, we are left with only 130 crore people who are the consumers. Now, out of this 130 crore people, Southern India has 24 crores population, and and the rest of the country is 104 crores population. I have pulled out South India from the country because consumption of Urad is the highest here, and since eating habits of South Indians have spread from South India to other parts of the country and the world, I have pulled out South India from the rest of the country. Now, if one considers a family of 4 people consisting of 2 adults and 2 young children, this means there are about 6 crore families. 6 crore divided by 4, that is 1.5, 6 crore, that is 24 crores divided by 4, that is 6 crore families. If 6 crore families consume on a monthly basis 3 to 4 kgs of Urad dal, that means they will be they will be consuming approximately 18 crore kilo of urad dal. That comes to 1,80,000 tons per month. That comes to 1,80,000 tons per month, or 12, approximately, one second please, hold on. 6 crore families divided by into 3 kilo, 18 divided by 1,000. It is coming to 1,80,000 tons per month into 12. It is coming to 21,60,000 tons per month. Now I come to the rest of the country. The rest of the country consumes the rest of the country means, if you remove South India, 130 minus 24, we have 104 crore families. 104 families, I am assuming only they consume only 750 grams per month. 750 grams per month. That means 104 crores into 0.75. This comes to 78 lakh kilos per month. This 78 lakh kilos per month means divided by 1,000. This is coming to 7,800 tons, per month. So, one second, please. There is some confusion. Hold on. 104 crores into 0.75. This is 78 crores. 78 crores kilos divided by 1,000. This is coming to 7,80,000 tons into tons. This is, you see, the consumption is going somewhere. It's vast consumption. Whereas what we are producing is much, much smaller. See, for example, if you look at the data given by the Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers Welfare, which is a part of the Ministry of Agriculture, the production for the year 2019-20 crop year was 20.4 lakh tons. That is Kharif 13 lakh tons and Rabi 7,40,000 tons. And add to this imports from Myanmar about 2,50,000 tons. This means this figure is awfully short of the consumption. Similarly, if you come to the year 2020-21, again I go by the data given by the Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers Welfare, which is a part of Ministry of Agriculture, which says that as per the third advance estimate, the total production comes to 23.8 lakh tons, Kharif 15.6 lakh tons, and Rabi 8.2 lakh tons. And add to this import from Myanmar, which has been very recently put under OGL, of 4 lakh tons till the next Kharif crop is harvested. So this totals to 27.8 lakh tons, which again is falling short of consumption levels under normal circumstances. Now I'm coming to, the consumption levels have recently, during the last 18 months, consumption levels have surely, fallen because of COVID. So I don't have to tell you that. Therefore, at the moment we are finding that the supply and demand are matching. But actually, this is not the case under normal circumstances. Now I'm coming to the market price of urad. In the last webinar of IPGA held on 11th February 21, I mentioned that the prices which were hovering at 85 rupees per kilo levels can come down to MSP levels if monsoon is good during 2021 Kharif crop times. It is just a coincidence that price levels have already slumped from 85 rupees per kg levels to 67 levels just a few days ago. And now hovering around 68 to 69 levels. I'm talking about SQ quality. If let me remind you that the prices which I just mentioned is of superior quality, whereas MSP is applicable to fair average qualities only. In fact, FAQ quality of Myanmar origin is now quoting at 61 or 62, which is just about equal to the MSP prices. Going ahead, I feel that coming to monsoon, I think Southwest monsoon 2021 is playing out well, as predicted by IMD, with normal occasional breaks. I'm quite optimistic that sowing operations would catch up the momentum, and I suspect that sowing figures would be quite considerable, given that the government of India is determined to increase the production by supplying record quantities of seeds. I think I should also commend the efforts of government of India to give the maximum prices to the local farmers by curtailing imports as and when necessary. My idea is that going forward, market prices of Urad will be quite range bound. The risk is monsoon playing truant. If monsoon plays truant, then I think the price spike cannot be ruled out, given that the stocks with the government procurement agencies are at very, very low levels. Regarding consumption, I should mention one more thing. That is, during the last 18 months, because of COVID, the consumption levels have gone down substantially. In fact, Azim Premji University, very recently, they have done a very scientific research, and then they found out that nearly 23 crore people have been pushed below poverty line. That would that is very understandable now why we are finding that the demand for many pulses it is just not there. I suspect that the demand, the consumption levels have gone very, very down, and that is the reason even though the prices have come down quite a bit, we are not able to find the demand which we normally expect to happen. I think once this COVID issue is completely out of the way, only then the normal demand comes back. And till that moment, I think the demand will continue to remain range bound. And my idea is going forward, at least till Kharif, the prices will be absolutely range bound. And if climate plays truant, I'm repeating, if the climate plays truant, then the price hike cannot be avoided because we don't have much of stocks at the governmental agencies, and we don't have much of stocks at Myanmar, not more than 250,000 tons, and we don't have many stocks in India. Therefore, let us pray that monsoon will play out very well. And the biggest risk I am seeing is, except monsoon, the biggest risk I am seeing is the monsoon. If monsoon goes very well, I think everything will be okay. I'm talking about from price point of view, prices will remain subdued. If monsoons are not playing out well, I think then we are going to have a serious issue because we don't have much of stocks either at India or at Myanmar. I conclude my presentation and I thanks again IPGA for this opportunity. I will take any questions and I will answer to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krishnamurthy. It is now my pleasure and honor to invite Mrs. Nidhi Khare, Additional Secretary, Department of Consumer Affairs, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, Government of India, who is a 1992 Jharkhand Cadre IAS officer and has been instrumental in bringing amendments in the EC Act, and also looks after the price stabilization of 22 commodities, which include pulses, onions, etc. Prior to this, she has served as Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change, as well as Ministry of Expenditure. Mrs. Khare has also served as Joint Secretary DBT and was instrumental in conceptualizing and implementing the nationally acclaimed program of direct benefit transfers, wherein subsidies for LPG and entitlements such as scholarships, pensions, and wages under MG Narega started reaching millions of beneficiaries seamlessly without any middlemen into their bank accounts, saving the nation almost 65,000 crore rupees annually. I once again thank Ms. Khare for stepping in the last minute and welcoming. Over to you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Pradeep, and also all the dignitaries who are present here. And I've been, I was hearing some of the presentations that were made. Extremely grateful to Mr. Jitu Bheda to have invited us. And also I saw the presentation by Mr. Sunil Seth, IMCC. Also, I had the privilege to hear about our ambassadors, our Indian ambassador to Myanmar, Mr. Saurabh Kumar's comments on how this very important MOU was signed with Myanmar, and I'm sure it will bring a lot of stability to both the countries. So I think we must actually basically see that over the past few years, except for perhaps 16, 17, India has been seeing a downward trend in the productivity and availability of pulses within the country. And that is how the price behavior that we have been monitoring over the past several years, they show the moderation and also the spike from time to time. Now we have a very institutionalized mechanism to watch for the prices of pulses and also understand the behavior of these prices. And the rising trend in the pulses actually made us aware about the gap in the demand and supply of various pulses. Now, we have the distinction of being a very predominantly pulse-based diet, and the preference for different pulses in different regions is also very, very peculiar. And that is why the department has a very important role to play when it comes to making the pulses available to our consumers and at a reasonable and fair price. Over the years that we have seen, we keep a watch on the acreage, on the production, on the productivity that we get from agriculture and other different sources. We also see the price behavior at the retail and wholesaler markets. And at this juncture, the department has actually strengthened the daily price monitoring system, which has given us a very accurate, say, feedback on how wholesalers and the retail prices or even mandi prices are behaving. When we saw that the availability of pulses is a challenge, and since it is not something which is being grown in say different parts of the country, and we saw that several other, including African countries, are ready to supply these pulses, we made a very bold decision of entering into a stable relationship of say over 5 years span, so that farmers in those countries also are assured to an extent that there will be a ready say market in India, and it will also provide pulses at moderate price to our consumers. We have also, I'm sure everyone has understood how we have eased the import restrictions, and we have tried to make it easy for the importers to at least bring this agro commodity without any difficulty. When we saw that there was some price rise and even after the harvest, the prices were showing a tendency to rise. In the middle of COVID pandemic, when everything was locked down, we started with a step to ensure that all the stocks are declared. So 15th May, we pressed in this exercise for all the stockists, for all the wholesalers and retailers. And I must say that we were very happy with our results, that at least, the availability part we could understand how from wholesalers and from stockists, how this movement of pulses is now, coming out to the market. And it is basically, it helped in checking the expected rise in the price. And thereafter, we were thinking it will further go down, and I'm quite sure from the trends that we are monitoring, it will further go down. But it was thought that the stock limits need to be imposed, and with some, say, a moderate amount kept in the order, and the order was also in such a way that there is an exit clause, and it was not like orders that we used to in the, say for example, when the order was imposed in 2006, it went on for about 10 years without any checks. So we made sure that it will be very, very, say, reflective of the prices which are rising in the market. And we are in touch with all the state governments. From my side, I can say that we are now much more, we are using technology in our predictions, in our in the monitoring of the prices that are prevalent across the country, across different mandis, across say different regions, and for different prices, for different varieties of pulses. And I think that that has given us the confidence to bring this instrument, though it is not a very popular one, but it was required to be brought. But it is only for very, very few, say, months, and with a deadline. And I can say with confidence that while we are watching the market, and while our goal is to provide pulses which are a very, say, cheap, say, food commodity that promises a lot of nutritional value to our even poor people. I think we will be very, very cautious and very careful in ensuring that it does not, say, bring imbalance to either sector. Neither the farmers should be, say, adversely impacted for the next sowing season, and nor the millers or the stockists, the traders, or all the stakeholders who are in the chain, including importers, should be adversely affected. So from my side, I can only say that we are very happy to be, in a position to have a long-lasting, say, relationship with the producers across the borders. And I feel that in the next 5 years, we'll be able to make pulses available at very, very reasonable prices, and in such a way that it also impacts positively our farmers. It makes them confident that by increasing the acreage, by say also kind of using better seeds, their productivity can be raised. For the millers, we would definitely say that as food processing industry, they are a very keen and a very integral part of this whole chain of supplies. And we really look forward to our continuous support from this sector. And I feel that while there are, say, logistic issues, which some of the speakers have highlighted, particularly when we are getting these pulses from Canada. Can we do it with, say, even Myanmar or other places? We are open to this, and I think that even for a country as a whole, it works. I mean, in terms of, say, diplomacy also, it works wonders. We had the opportunity of working with these nations, and I see a kind of, say, a commitment towards fulfilling the requirements during these 5 years. So I look forward to the question and answers that is slated at the end of this workshop, and would be very happy to offer any clarification or any, say, anything which further makes our position known to the sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We do appreciate your taking time out to participate in the webinar. And I do have a question for you, ma'am, is with respect to the MOU with Myanmar and Malawi also for the poor supplies. When do the ma'am?
Yes, please.
I'll repeat my question. With respect to the MOUs that have been signed, so when do these get effected? In the sense, will it be immediately after the OGL regime ends on 31st October, or will there be a kind of a period left aside to first take stock of the situation in terms of how much has arrived, and then will the MOU be implemented in terms of the imports of the stock? That's one. Second is, now, for example, if the MOU with Myanmar is for 100,000 tons of crude for this financial year, will that be over and above what has already got imported in this financial year, or will that quantity be reduced from the 100,000 tons and then licenses be issued? How would that implementation happen?
See, I think you must have followed it up with the Commerce Ministry also. We have taken it out from the restriction list. This is basically to say augment the import of pulses in a rather, say, without say the binding of a quota. The idea being that we would like the availability of pulses uh, to be made available to the consumers in any which way. Now, when we enter into the MOU, it is largely to also indicate other countries, farmers of other countries, because it is nationally, we saw something on the shelf. So people have to be, say, confident that they are now on a long-term, say, plan. And whatever is the harvest there, this is the size of the MOU that this much we will be allowing. Now, since you know that most of the, particularly like pulses like Tur, were facing a lot of, say, difficulty. Even Urad, it was not available in the country. And so the idea is that uh, I mean, in the first instance, we wanted the pulses very, very badly. And that is how it has been taken out of the restricted list. Thereafter, we also want to, for a short term, this will work. For a long term, definitely the standing MOUs with these countries will also help in understanding how much we need, how much we consume, how much, see, ultimately, just as we are distributing, say, rice and wheat under the PDS system, and that has helped saved people, at least through the pandemic, when people lost their jobs. It was difficult. At least people did not die of hunger. We also saw that when we supplied chana through PMGKY, it was a very popular, it was a very popular step, and everyone was very positive, all states put together. Now, can we do it on a sustained basis if we have more pulses? So we can think in those lines.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, just to understand this a little more clearly, so the final implementation or the modalities of the MOU will come from the Commerce Ministry, right, ma'am?
Yes.
Let me just quickly bring in both Vatsal and Desh here. With the MOUs announced with 100,000 tons for Tor and 2.5 lakh tons for Urad, have especially with the Myanmar farmers going into sowing now, do you see an immediate impact on an increase in acreage in Myanmar, Vatsal?
See, as far as Tuar is concerned, the planting is underway at the moment as we talk. I'm sure it'll give some impetus to the farmers that, India is there to support to some extent. But people who have gone away, who have gone to other crops, I don't think they're going to come back with a quantity of 100,000 tons. People who have stuck with Tuar, they have some confidence that at least there is going to be a home for whatever they produce to some extent. The other factor that I understand is that this 100,000 is the minimum. It's not going to be limited to 100,000. So over and above this 100,000, you also have the import licenses that are going to be issued. So the import license is issued for say 400,000 tons. Myanmar will be able to participate in that 400,000 plus get this 100,000, which I think should be good. Yes. If the number is 400,000 on the licenses.
And Desh, Urad will be going into sowing much later in the year. But given the fact that there's a 2.5 lakh ton MOU with Myanmar for Urad, do you expect the sowing to definitely take an upward swing?
So, Pradeep, I will answer it with some data. If you look back, 3-4 years, roughly 6 lakhs tons were exported of black mate. Over a period of time, last year, roughly it touched around 5.5 lakh, close to 5 lakh tons. And, with such kind of announcement, farmers will definitely look, it is a promising, thing for the farmer as well, but it will not come immediately. Farmers over the past years have seen how the policies frequently changed from the other side, from India's side. And over a period of time, they have moved to other crops, maybe green moong, soybean, yellow maize, all those things. So it will take some time for them to, understand how the policy is going to, be affected over 3 years, 5 years time frame. But yes, there could be a positive sentiment coming in from the farmer side, but I would not see immediately impact will be there in terms of sowing because they have also seen the farm economics of the other crop, which is benefiting them. And they have already established some kind of trade flow for those crops in different kind of markets. So yeah, so positive sentiment will be there, but it will take few years to understand how the policy is, whether it is stable or not. Thank you.
Pradeep, I just want to add to something that I said. You see, today you have MOU for 100,000 and you possibly have an import license of 400. I think Myanmar would rather take it the other way around. That is, you give us an MOU of 400 and then you have an import license of 100, because then you're at least assured of a much larger quantity. I mean, you understand what I'm saying, right? 100,000 is the minimum. If the minimum can be increased, and okay, you reduce the import license quantity, but you hike the minimum MOU quantity, I think that is a much better thing for Myanmar as a country, for the trade.
Ma'am, would it be possible for you to throw some light on what is the current buffer stock holding that the government has, especially with Urad and Moong?
For the stock limit?
No, currently the buffer stock held by, say, a NAFED in terms of these three pulses.
No, I don't immediately have the correct figure.
Okay.
But it is large. The largest is about 10 LMT for Chana, say 7 for Tuar, or 4 for Urad, and so on.
Okay. Desh, there's a question for you which came in the Q&As. By what amount has shipping charges increased for pulses transfer from Myanmar to India in terms of per container or tons over a couple of months earlier or a year before? Also, what can be done to amend it on a more favorable side of promoting trade between the two countries?
So, last couple of months, with the constraint in terms of logistics and containers availability, we were seeing, almost $500 per FCL, some time back, which eventually went up to $2,200 per FCL. And gradually we are seeing it is coming down. But, the freights has actually taken away the entire margin or whatever, we had at this point of time.
Vatsal, apart from the two vessels that you mentioned were being loaded, are currently being loaded in Myanmar, in the near future, how many such more break bulk vessels do you foresee getting loaded for India?
There is one more vessel that has been planned for the month of July, about 8,800 tons or so. And I believe there are 3 smaller vessels loading for Calcutta. Some have loaded, some are to be loaded. These are probably sizes of 2,500 to 3,000 tons. I think everybody is watching as to what the experience on these 3 to 4 vessels is. If the experience is a good one, then this is going to be something of a regular nature, simply because container freights have just run away. This is a much more cost-effective method of getting the pulses across.
Ma'am, before we come towards the end of this, I'd just like to draw your attention. We had the opportunity to meet Secretary Ma'am a couple of days back, and we've actually submitted a representation wherein we've detailed out the kind of impact the stock limits are going to have across the entire value chain, right from the farmer up to the consumer level. And we've made a few requests in that too. We really do hope that due cognizance gets taken on that, and we'll be more than happy to come and meet the Consumer Affairs Ministry once again and have a more detailed discussion on the whole issue, because we do foresee a little bit of a issue coming up in the near future when with the entire thing, because while on one hand we have an OGL, on the other hand stock limit. So we fear kind of a bottleneck happening in terms of the supply. So please do take that into consideration when discussions do happen.
Absolutely. So that is why, our approach has been very, it's not an open-ended order. And then we've also asked the states to take their own, we have made these, this order largely to address the ecosystem that prevails in the country, because there are a few states which have the farmers, so producers are there. Then there are other states who have a predominance of milling facility, and then from there how it moves to different parts of the country, and there is predominance of liking about one pulse over the other, or even switching. I mean, in case one pulse is actually very steep, then what is the next pulse that people usually prefer? So we have kept all these things in mind, and that is why it has an exit clause also, that we don't want this to be imposed. But I think we are monitoring it very closely. Every day we are monitoring the prices and how it plays out. your communication has been also received, and it has highlighted a few things. What was important for us was, during the lockdown, when the entire country, even informally, went into lockdown, in the sense that most of the conspicuous consumption was curtailed in terms of, say, marriage parties and things like that. Still, the prices were rising, and that was something which was difficult to understand. I mean, we can say that there was definitely a gap between the supply and demand, because this time logistics were not held back. So we cannot say that it was a total lockdown and that's why trucks were not moving or some such thing. Or even if there was, it was only briefly for a very small, say, time interval that it was imposed between the two states. So I'm sure with the positive steps that we have taken of making it available to the consumers, I think that will help us in understanding how this is moving. And at the same time, the limits that we have imposed, it is for a very brief period. And rest assured, we are monitoring the trends, and we will not want, either to say, as I said, adversely impact the farmers, the choice of sowing, or even the millers and other stakeholders in the chain.
Ma'am, our worry is that with the Kharif sowing just getting underway now, given that there are limitations in terms of what a wholesaler or a trader can hold, we are worried that it could affect the whole sowing intention or the intentions of the farmers. So, what is it that you feel? And do you feel that this could affect the sowing intentions, or the government is comfortable that no, it will not? Because even right now, prices are either at the MSP or just below the MSP levels for most pulses except Moong. So even in such a scenario, the whole imposition of stock limits is actually to a level confused also the entire trade as to with
So that's
everything
what
still
I'm saying,
below.
So, during this lockdown, when I said that even conspicuous consumption was not so much into play, it was difficult to say, assign one particular reason. What was the reason for this, you know, uh, this gap between the demand and supply? And there was also this notion whether pulses are being hoarded or they are being some syndicators working, some such thing. Now, because as I said that we are monitoring the prices daily, we are also monitoring how much imports have arrived, how much, what is the feedback from the states. So we'll be taking into account all that, including, what is the agriculture department's view, how their figures are, getting impacted. So we will not allow that. That's what is the bottom line, that farmers should not suffer, because we understand it's a cyclical nature of the problem. By solving one, we won't want to have another problem.
Ma'am, you mentioned an exit clause. Could you elaborate a little and explain that exit clause that you had mentioned, which is there in the
See, earlier, the imposition of stock limits, if you see, when we imposed it in 2006, it continued for almost a decade. So we don't want that. We just want it for tiding over the problem. And that is why the exit clause, which means that we've said that up to 31st October, this will be there in action. So it also shows that the government is, very open to taking decisions in the sense that it would require, again a review, whether we have to extend it or whether we have to drop it. So this shows that we will be
Ma'am, so after this, it is also that the state governments can take an actual call on imposing the limits or not, depending on the ground conditions, or will it be
that
applicable
always
irrespective?
happens. That always happens. When last year we imposed stock limits on onion, for example, states like Northeast, they did not require. So it all depends. And even we
So
are
state governments will have the option.
No, I'm saying state governments will have, they will have to give their feedbacks, how it is impacting them, things like that. So we are open to even receiving their suggestions, how it is working, what is the rollout, is it helping the cause ultimately? See, it is important to understand that initially we thought that it is the lack of availability of pulses. And when we took the pulses out of restrictive list, we were expecting that, okay, the imports would help us in tiding over this problem. Now, from our own, say, estimates, as I said that, conspicuous consumption has reduced. So even if, it was not available, and even after opening of, say, imports, we expected that there would be some moderation in the prices. The prices had stabilized. A few pulses also showed a little downward trend, but it was still much, much more than say last year in the same phase of say season. So that was what was very worrying. That is it, the black marketing or hoarding? What is it? What is it that is checking the pulses from coming into the market?
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Punitji, you had something to say?
Sir, I have a question with Honorable Madam. Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
As MSP prices are increasing every year, ma'am, in last 2 years, as you can see, MSP prices of tuber has been increased from 58 to 63 rupees. Ma'am, in tandem, the finished product prices also increases by 7 rupees. If you increase MSP prices by 5, then finished product prices increases by 7. Ma'am, how do government see these prices? Ma'am, in 2 years, prices of wholesale market has been increased by 7 rupees. Does government see this as an inflation, or how does government see this?
Although I'm not the correct person to answer this because MSPs are fixed by another department, but I see your point that ultimately MSPs also drive into what is actually happening. But I mean, if we see only from the price behavior of the pulses, we will have to do something about what's happening in our sector because one, it is not perishable. I mean, you can have a better shelf life. It is also that it is used for other, say, at least chana. We can say that it is used in other things also. But there is definitely a concern at the highest level that we have to reduce the inflation, both the food inflation as well as the inflationary trends. And it is only with this concern that prices should not go, haywire. the rising trend was simply eating into everyone's, it was difficult to kind of say wish it away. And because there were no harvest in sight, we had to take some decision.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I'll just go back to our panelists and I'd like to know if you have a last few one last observation or comment to make to wrap up. Vatsal, can we start with you? Any last thoughts?
Pradeep, no, I have nothing further to add. I think it was a nice comprehensive webinar and look forward to having these on a regular basis, probably once every 6 months or so, to refresh as to what is happening in the market, both on the Indian and the Myanmar side. So thank you for having me and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Mr. Krishnamurthy? So you need to unmute.
Yeah, so I think this stock limits are not applicable to Chana, which is traded electronically. Am I right? Stock limits are not applicable to Chana, which are traded electronically. I mean, am I right, madam? I mean, if I am right, then I will proceed further.
Actually, we have kept Chana out in a singular, say, fashion. But we've said that, say, not more than 100 MT per pulses. So in that sense, I mean, there is also some restriction on Chana.
Yeah, no, why I'm saying this, madam? In fact, black matte and I mean, Urad and Moong, they were brought under electronic trade, if I'm not wrong, around 13, 14 years ago, along with Chana. And later, these two have been removed from the electronic trade, and Chana has been, still been allowed to trade. So I'm just trying to understand. I mean, is it a good choice to bring them back into electronic trade? These both Tour and Urad also. Is it a good idea to bring back into the electronic trading so that the trade becomes smooth?
Are you saying the stocks that are held in WDRA approved warehouses, which are on the?
No, what I'm saying, if what I'm saying, just like Chana is allowed electronically to be traded, is it also not a good idea to bring these two also into electronic trading?
It's a good idea. I mean, we can explore this possibility.
Please, thank you, madam. Thank you. Please, that would be a good idea because that will free the trade from different doubts which are difficult to get clarity. Please think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Desh, any closing remarks?
No, it was well structured, I think, a webinar. A lot of cross-learning we could see, and even I could understand and learn things over here. Having worked on the other side of the country, I can very well understand the current challenges which India has. So I think it was a good learning experience for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Desh. Punitji, any last remarks?
Sir, I am the youngest one. It was a great learning experience for me. I'll remember this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ma'am, any closing remarks from you? Something that you leave us with?
It was a very, very, very nicely managed and very nicely conducted webinar. And it has also helped us in knowing, the facts from different sectors. And we are also very happy to see that, the long-term MOUs that we have signed with different countries, as, how it is impacting the farmers there, how it is impacting the country, and how in the long term, both our country as well as, the country with whom we have signed MOUs are going to see a much more stronger relationship, and how, what we gain mutually, it will be something which I think in times to come we can safeguard our consumers from the lack of availability of pulses.
Thank you very much. And before I close, I'd like to convey my heartfelt thanks and gratitude of the IPGA Managing Committee and all our members to Mrs. Nidhi Khare, His Excellency Shri Sarok Kumarji, Mr. Krishnamurthy, Sunil Bachawat, Mr. Desh Ratna, and Mr. Vatsal Lilani for taking time out and participating in this webinar today and sharing your invaluable thoughts and comments and data more than that. And we do look forward to your continued support in the future too. We will be hosting these webinars at least once a month going forward. If necessary, as and when required, we will even look at doing more than one webinar a month. And we definitely will come back to invite you all once again to share your thoughts on this platform. Thank you once again very much. And a very big thank you to all the advertisers who've supported the webinars we've hosted today, as well as today's webinar. And of course, for the last but not the least, the entire IMCC Managing Committee for extending their hand to join us in this endeavor. And we look forward to working together with the IMCC in the near future and on a long-term basis. And of course, how can I not thank all the participants who've also taken time out and have been with us for the last 2.5 hours and not parted ways from the webinars. Thank you once again to everybody in India, Myanmar, and over the world. And I'll officially close this webinar for today. Thank you very much. Thank you.